This is a common lecture in the courses Project Management in Different Business Sectors in the MPM program and the course Project Management and Strategic Planning in the Master program of the School of Science and Engineering. We will be talking about something called projectification in Germany, Norway and Iceland. We will define the term projectification, and we will talk about a research project where this concept, projectification, was assessed in these three economies. The main term here is the term projectification. This is not an old term. It emerged in 1995 in a paper by Midler. Midler was looking at the organization of the French car manufacturer Renault and describing the extent to which Renault was applying project management, how this had changed over time, and what was the impact on the company. We can say that the term projectification became a kind of a buzzword for describing what we may call a widespread phenomenon in today's industries, and this is the diffusion of projects as a form of organizing in all sectors of the economy. And there is a number of papers on this subject that can be found in the literature, and in this slide we just give you a few examples if you would like to dig a little bit deeper into the subject. The literature claims that projectification of the economies is steadily on the rise. However, we have not been able to measure this directly in any monetary terms. So, claiming that projectification is on the rise is more like a general observation or a gut feeling. Up to now, we haven't been able to support that gut feeling with any tangible data. And it is fairly difficult to put the finger on this. So the study is all about this, measuring the extent of the projectification in the entire economy in some terms that actually are recognized and acknowledged. This is, of course, quite interesting from many points of view. From a theoretical point of view, we would very much like to know the degree of projectification of the different sectors and, of course, the entire economy, to investigate the value of projects, the value of labor market effects, income effects, productivity effects, etc. From a practical point of view, this is quite important for researchers in project management and, of course, for the discipline of project management to know the actual degree of projectification. And you can imagine how helpful this could be when we are arguing about the importance of our discipline in organizations and in society in whole. I will just give you the main results of this international research project so far. We have done this assessment in Germany, in Norway and in Iceland using basically identical methods. And we have found out that in Germany, the extent of projectification is little lower than 35%. In Norway, it is little lower than 33%, and in Iceland, it was little lower than 28%. And these are figures from the years 2013-2014. So these are quite interesting ratios, and we can use these ratios along with the scope of the economy in the different countries, and we can find out the scope of project work in Germany and also in Iceland. We have found out that in Iceland for 2014, the annual monetary value of projects was 425 billion Icelandic kroner and growing. Another aspect of the research was to assess the changes that are taking place, and we find out that looking at the period 2009 to 2014, productification is increasing in all countries. Germany 18.4%, Iceland 10.8%, and in Norway 20.3%. And then we forecast the change to year 2020, and the change between 2009 and 2020 is expected to be 40% in Germany, 26% in Iceland, and 25% in Norway. So productification is on the rise in all countries. We can look more specifically into the figures from Iceland, the past, the present, and the future. And by using the NACE code, where we categorize the different segments of the economy, we can see how this is changing between the periods. The column in the middle is the present situation, or the situation at the time where the survey was actually conducted. In that time, we saw that the productification in Iceland was 27.7%, as I said earlier. We also have figures for the past, that is the share of project work in 2009 in the first column. And we have the expected productification in year 2019. And we see that this is expected to rise from 27.7 to 31.5%. And we can also look at the different sectors. And please look at the numbers, and you will see some strange numbers when you look at the table. And I ask you to look specifically at category A, agriculture, forestry, and fishing, where we have 4% in the past, in the present, and the future. And the same situation for real estate, 2% in the past, present, and future. Also for construction and for corporate service providers. And I will explain later to you the reason for this. And this is important for you to understand, because this is the essence of the research project that you will be doing in connection with this general research topic. I would like to draw your attention to one quite interesting outcome of this research. You can see here the different project types in the organizations, and we make a distinction between projects that are being done internally in the organizations, internal projects. These can be organizational projects, IT projects, research projects, product development projects, infrastructure projects, or different kinds of projects. And then we have the external projects, and these are projects done for an external client. For instance, a contractor company that builds houses, when they are assigned a contract to build a house, they build this house, and that is an external project. If the same company would implement let's say a quality management system in their operation, that would of course be a project, and that would be an internal project. So this is just to explain to you the difference between internal projects and external projects. And we find out in the Icelandic study that the majority of projects are in fact internal projects. You can see that the total numbers in the last row. So only 13% of all projects are in fact external projects, but the majority of projects are internal projects in the companies. We can also talk about the scope of project work in terms of money instead of ratios. And of course, for Iceland, we see much lower figures than in Germany, for instance, because of the different sizes of the economies. So for comparison, it's much better to use the ratios, but some might find it interesting to look at the scope of the sectors in terms of project work and see, for instance, that the largest sector is the public sector, education and health, but the lowest sector is financial services and insurance. In a later lecture, we will explain to you the research method that we applied. But I will end this lecture by mentioning a few of the limitations to this research, because of course we are simplifying and making some assumptions. First, I would like to mention the limited number of cases. In Iceland, we contacted a total of 142 organizations. So all the figures from Iceland are based on data from 142 companies. Of course, that is a simplification. In Iceland, we have a total of 17,000 organizations. So we are only contacting 142 of them. For comparison, I could tell you that in Germany, in the same study, we contacted 500 companies. But in Germany, there are 3.6 million companies. So you can see that the relative number of organizations contacted in Iceland is higher than in Germany. There are also other simplifications in the study. I might talk about the heterogeneous economic subsectors. For instance, you would expect that the financial and insurance services sectors would be relatively homogeneous, whereas, for instance, the manufacturing industry would be quite different sub-industries that are quite different. So this is a simplification in Germany, also in Iceland. A third simplification, which is particularly important for you, is that we made assumptions for chosen sectors in this study, and this is due to the limited resources regarding the sample size. So, for instance, for the sector agriculture, forestry and fisheries, we assumed that the productification is 4%. This is a number from Germany, and it is the result of both literature research and expert interviews in Germany. And this is, of course, an important simplification. In Iceland, we did also interviews. We talked to experts in the area, and we decided after consultation to use the same ratio, 4% in Iceland. And in fact, we used the same simplifications as in Germany for 4 of the total number of sectors. So this is an assumption. So actually there was no actual data collection for these sectors. We just assumed that the productification in these sectors was 4%, both in the past, in the present, and in the future. And this is what we are going to focus on in the present research. We will come to that in a later lecture, but just to continue with the simplifications and limitations of this study. The main challenge in this study was to develop and apply a measurement that could be used independently of the type of the project, the economic sector, and the relevant organizational factors in the industries. We choose the share of working time spent in projects as an indicator of productification, and that is a simplification. We could not use the GGP directly, so instead we used input-oriented indicators to assess the productification. And last but not least, I should add that the data is of course based on interviews, and this is subjective evaluation of experts within the companies. So that creates of course some bias and should be mentioned as a limiting factor to the study.